Manalo, Matichek, Manalo, Matichek, Mellinger, Meckelson, Montano, Piccolotti, Pierce,
Here.
Ragsdale,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
Stevenson, Stone, Vella, Weed, and Zichterman. And you have a quorum. And I see Andrews, so thank you. And just a reminder, in order for the people on the phone to hear you, you need to speak in a mic. So take the time to move the mics around so that everybody can hear you, especially Director Dorr that's on the phone.
And if your mic has a switch, you better make sure it's turned on. So, okay. Next is salute to the flag. So if we could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome everyone to BAWSCA's November 21st, 2024 meeting. As a reminder, this meeting is being live streamed to enable the public to watch remotely, so please use the microphones appropriately. We also have one board member, Director Dorr, participating via teleconference in compliance with the traditional Brown Act rules for teleconferencing into a meeting, so all votes will need to be conducted by roll call. Our full agenda tonight includes several actions that continue this board's important work in support of the agency's transition to a new CEO. In addition, the board will also be considering a change in the approved compensation for board members per day of service. We do need to end our meeting by 10 p.m., however, to give staff enough time to break down the meeting room after the conclusion of the meeting. As has been the case for the past few meetings, public comment items will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker for all items, except a second period for extended public comment, which is item 12 on our current agenda. Comments during that time will be based upon an as time permits basis, with no guarantees. I appreciate the board's cooperation in addressing tonight's action items promptly so we can efficiently handle our essential business in the time available. Our next agenda item is the BPC report. Director Hardy, take it away.
Thank you. Yes, the BPC met on Wednesday, October 9th. There were quite a few different recommendations. I hope everyone read their minutes. I will not go through those, but we had a good, robust discussion, and I think came up with some good recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 4 is public comments for any items not on the agenda. Any public here to make public comments? Do we have any speaker cards?
We have no speaker cards. There are no speaker cards. You may want to ask Director Dorr if she has a speaker in her
Director
place.
Dorr, do you have any public there that would like to say something during the public comment section? Director Dorr?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 5 is the PUC report given by Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Sears. Okay.
Mr. Ritchie is here. Mr. Sears is rapidly approaching.
Not on our freeway system.
I think your microphone may be off, Steve.
You mean just like this? Yeah, that'll work. No, Mr. Sears should be en route, and that was actually realizing this is not the easiest building space to get into, so I was starting to walk out there saying, Bill, where are you? But I'm happy to go ahead and start with the water supply update, because that was the first part of this, which is a pretty simple and straightforward presentation. It's just a few slides. Starting off with our existing storage, it was a wet year relatively last year, so our storage this year, starting off, is in good shape, even though October was very, very dry. There is Mr. Sears right now, so I don't have to have a song and dance going along later. But reservoir levels are very high, and so we're moving forward very nicely. Precipitation, this was as of November 17th. So you see there that, this is the red bars are the average for each month of the year. And you see that for November, we were at 1 inch. Now that is changing dramatically. I literally just got an email before I got here that we expect up at Hetchy 2 inches on Friday by itself. So we're looking at that plus over the next week, another couple of inches on top of that. So we will probably be above average for the month of November at this point in time. And a similar result probably for the Bay Area here. I will just add a little note. I did have a conversation with Michael Carlin, who many of you know this morning. He currently lives in Healdsburg, and he had 6 inches of rain. So it's definitely north of here. There's a lot of precipitation. And this is the precipitation forecast. For those who haven't seen these charts before, the bright colors are the higher amounts of precipitation. The upper box is basically this week in terms of what precipitation is like. And you can see there's that orange finger sticking down into the upcountry area and a little bit around the Bay Area. But then as you move into the lower box, which is next week, you see it actually coming up from the south more. So we are definitely looking at a higher period of precipitation here. This is our total deliveries and the different colors there. The green line is this year. The orange line is 2015, which was our lowest demand year. The blue line is last year, and the yellow line is the last 5-year average. And you'll note that actually during the summer, the green line was above the 5-year average. It was quite a warm summer, and so demand was very much up. But as you also see there, as you get towards the end of the year now, it always comes down to roughly about the same demand. Roughly 140 million gallons per day is our lowest wintertime demand that you'll see. So that's really all I have to say about water supply. And before I turn it over to Bill, just ask if there are any questions on that count. Hearing none, let me introduce Bill Sears, who is a crack biologist who's been working for us for many years, he lives in Santa Cruz, so he had to come over the hill. That was the part of the big challenge for him. But he will talk about one of the things we've been working on for many years relative to releases from O'Shaughnessy Dam, and it's quite an interesting story. So, Bill. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Well, good evening, BAWSCA board members. Tom, I want to thank Tom for the invite tonight. He came to one of our work group meetings, which we have twice a year up country, and Nicole, I think you've been to 1 or 2 of those. A lot of the work that we've been doing on the Upper Tuolumne River has been really focused on science. So San Francisco has been just incredibly focused on how do we manage the river downstream of O'Shaughnessy Dam for ecological benefit over time. And so this is the picture that you see often. I took this picture years ago. But really we're talking about how we release water downstream of O'Shaughnessy Dam and how we're proposing to change that into the future. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Upper Tuolumne River Ecosystem Program. We call it UTREP, for lack of a better acronym. But what is it? It's a collaborative river ecosystem program that San Francisco is leading. The idea behind it is really threefold, is to describe the ecosystem conditions downstream of the dam, to characterize the relationship between the releases from Hetch Hetchy Reservoir and the river ecosystem itself, and then to develop recommendations for how we might improve our releases to improve the river ecosystem over time. This is the study area. Hopefully you can see that map. There's kind of some bigger lines, colored lines there, downstream of Cherry, Eleanor, and O'Shaughnessy Dams down to Don Pedro. So this is the Upper Tuolumne River. This is our study area for the UTREP program. What is the environmental flow study? So we've been studying this river for a long time. We've brought all of this information into a single document. That's a rather large document, has lots of appendices, a lot of information. We've recently updated it from 2014. And so the study is basically the PUC describing what our recommended changes are for in-stream flow releases. We have existing in-stream flow releases that are focused primarily on rainbow trout management. And the idea behind it is to shift to a more broad ecosystem-based release regime. And so all of this work has been based on studies that are conducted by the National Park Service, Yosemite National Park, and the SFPUC and their consultants. The focus really is on this upper reach, which is kind of schematically drawn here, which is just between O'Shaughnessy Dam and early intake. So, like I said, the recommended flow releases are designed to support a broader range of native species in this reach of the Hetch Hetchy Reach compared to our existing requirements. The idea is to better mimic the full range of the natural hydrology of the Upper Tuolumne River to provide those benefits. And you know, over time, I've been at this for 16 plus years now. The idea was to build this collaborative process with federal agencies, including the National Park Service, the Forest Service, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and develop these recommendations with a big collaborative group. And that's worked really well, we think. We've gotten to a really good place with everyone on the Upper River. So implementation of these recommendations requires updating existing agreements. These are stipulations under the Raker Act that the U.S. Department of Interior would have to approve. So what are the recommendations? What are coming out of this study? What are we recommending? The main thing is changing our base flow releases. These are the minimum flows that come out of O'Shaughnessy Dam. The idea behind changing those flows from the way they are currently is to better mimic the natural hydrologic and thermal regimes, to increase productivity for rainbow trout, and to improve support for foothill ewe-legged frog, which is a recently listed species under the Endangered Species Act, the Federal Endangered Species Act. The other big part of this is how we spill, changing how we spill. And the basic idea behind this is to change how we spill in the spring to add ecological objectives and not just have operational objectives. And so the idea is to maintain and potentially expand some really important wetlands that are downstream about 3 miles from O'Shaughnessy Dam, called the Poupano Valley Wetlands. And then to increase the frequency of sediment transport to maintain the aquatic riparian habitat that's in the river, and to just try to better mimic these natural physical processes that were present before the dam was there. Okay, so where are we at? In October, we provided a draft study to the work group. It was our fall meeting for the work group. And we also presented the draft recommendations to the work group at that time. And we've also received some initial comments back from National Park Service, our partner on the river. And we're currently kind of going through those comments and updating the document as best we can to answer some of those comments. Every single year, since about 2006, San Francisco has been changing the way we release spill, trying to experiment with the recommendations that we have for snowmelt spill. And so we annually talk to the National Park Service about that program and get their input on how we might better release spill releases in particular on the Upper Tuolumne River for ecological benefit. And we continue to coordinate with the Park Service on our various programs that we have with the park. including looking downstream, which is looking at the Poupano Valley, and then the amphibian project work that we have going with them, mainly around foothill-legged frog. So the next steps for this really are to confirm what is the environmental review process going forward. We do need to go through CEQA and NEPA to make these changes permanent, and to update the stipulations under the Raker Act. Just briefly, San Francisco's been monitoring populations of frogs and fish and birds and bats and other things up there in the upper Tuolumne River for years, for a decade or more. And we continue to do that work, and we'll continue to do that work over time. And that's it for me. We have a website, the uppertuolumneriver.wordpress.com. You can check it out. It's a little dated. We're trying to update it, but it's got a lot of good documentation and good background on the program as a whole. So thank you.
Any questions? Karen, Director Hardy?
Thank you. Searching my brain, shame on me. I'm trying to remember some of the basic provisions of the Raker Act, because I have heard of it. I'm trying to remember. And
Yeah.
I'm a little confused because when we talk about trying to take the upper Tuolumne back to without a dam type idea,
Yeah,
in a drought year, there wouldn't be much water anyway.
that's correct.
Correct?
That's correct. In, I would say, the second or third year of a drought, for example, which is what we've experienced in the past, the kind of longer droughts, we'll see about 7 cubic feet per second coming into Hetch Hetchy Reservoir from the main stem Tuolumne River. And so that's very low. Our minimum flows currently since 1987 downstream of O'Shaughnessy Dam have been 35, even in a very dry year, a sequential dry year. So there is a lot of interest in maintaining the trout fishery below O'Shaughnessy Dam, and that was a directive from the Department of Interior, from the Secretary, back in 1961, when San Francisco first had its first in-stream flow release requirements at O'Shaughnessy. And that directive was to maintain the fishery below O'Shaughnessy Dam. So the recommendations going forward aim to achieve a few different things. One is to maintain that trout fishery, and two, to address the need to manage for foothill yellow-legged frog, which was recently listed and is a species of interest for many groups, including obviously the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And then to maintain some of the other values that the National Park Service holds for the Poupano Valley as well, and the wetlands that are there. So dry years always going to be a challenge, but it built into this program, and our recommendations are flows that maintain all of those values as best we can. Is that helpful to?
Okay.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
just high level, I'm trying to remember the Raker Act. Was
Yep.
that?
In terms of the flow requirements? Or?
What
Oh, what?
you referenced the Raker Act several times.
Yes.
So I'm wondering what parts of that are you trying to maintain, or
Yeah.
what do you want to change to make
Understood.
certain that we are upholding that?
Yes. So the Raker Act itself has no in-stream flow, minimum in-stream flow requirements for releases to the Tuolumne River. In 1961, the Department of Interior recognized that there is a need for in-stream flow releases below O'Shaughnessy Dam, and so they issued, or it was negotiated, the 1961 stipulation. This is an agreement based on the Raker Act, under the authority of the Raker Act, that established the minimum in-stream flow. So the Raker Act itself has no mention of in-stream flow releases or fisheries management of any kind, but the stipulations that came from 1961 and onward do spell all that out. Thanks for your patience, my answer there.
Okay, thank you. Director Snyder.
Thank you. My questions are going to sound a little bit weird, but we have red-legged frog in an area right on the wetlands. So in your study, you talked about thermal conditions, and I'm curious if you are looking at, with climate change, how species are migrating, plant species are migrating, and are you thinking of having to add more shade over water bodies to keep the thermal record down? And if so, then the rest of us dealing with that kind of problem might be able to duplicate some of your science.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for foothill yellow-legged frog, they actually need warmer temperatures than trout do. to develop rapidly enough in the spring and summer to make it through the following winter. And the area that we're talking about on the Upper Tuolumne River is really kind of the foothills of the Sierra Nevada and a little bit higher up into kind of the high country where these frogs are living in the reach that we've been talking about of the river. And so temperatures typically of the water coming out of O'Shaughnessy Dam are very cold. They're usually, I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but it's going to be like 10 to 13 degrees centigrade, which is very cold. And it warms up a little bit as it goes downstream, and of course in the summertime it gets quite warm. And the temperatures there straddle kind of the needs of rainbow trout and foothill yellow-legged frog. As to modifying kind of the shade or cover of the stream to manage for foothill yellow-legged frog, for that species, there's really no need for that as far as we can tell. It would be very challenging in the channel that we're talking about in the river because it's really a bedrock stream that's high gradient, it's very steep. And so it's hard to get vegetation to kind of grow along that because of the high flows that the Upper Tuolumne River experiences. So I hope that's helpful. I mean, certainly, red-legged frog are, to some extent, I think, more of a still water species. They're not really a riverine species. They mostly, are around ponds and wetlands. So I don't know to what extent, I'm not an expert in red-legged frog. I'm not sure to what extent they might need more protection from rising temperatures.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from board members? Director Dorr, since I can't see your hand, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Director Pierce.
Yeah, thank you. I found what you've been talking about really interesting, and I'm really glad that there's this collaborative working group. I'm really curious, what was the most recent in-stream flow number, and what are you anticipating trying with? And do you do it for a year or two and then get the results and then make the final decisions on what you're going to do?
Yeah, good question. So like our current flows on the Upper Tuolumne River, gosh, Steve, what are they? I'm trying to remember. They're- Is it 53 CFS coming out? So 53 cubic feet per second. Think of a cubic foot per second as a single basketball going by. And so 53 basketballs going by as you're looking downstream. So that's kind of the current release. We experiment with the high flow releases in the spring, when Hetch Hetchy Reservoir has to spill water because it's full. And so that's where we do a lot of the experimentation with is how high can we get the flow releases to move gravel and sediment that are in the channel that benefits the habitat for foothill yellow-legged frog and rainbow trout. And what we also try to do for the foothill yellow-legged frog in particular is what we call the recession limb, which is kind of the back end of the hydrograph. In the spring, we try to make that as smooth as possible so that those frogs can lay eggs and that the eggs don't become dewatered or come out of the water. They need to stay in the water until they hatch out. And so that's part of the experimentation that we do too, in terms of really trying to dial in the flows and the flow rate as we're coming down back to the base flows in the summer.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, any public comment on PUC report? Or in remote, but I don't think there's any public in for Director Dorr. Okay, thank you very much.
You bet.
Our next item of business is the consent calendar. Any public comment on consent calendar? Hearing none, any questions from the board on consent calendar? Okay, Director Mellinger.
Move the consent calendar.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Mellinger. Is there a second? Second. Second by Director Hardy. Any further comments? Let's have a roll call.
Andrews?
Aye.
Bro?
Yes, for Brisbane and GVMID.
Thank you. Chambers?
Aye.
Cohen? Director Dorr?
Yes.
Thank you. Duncan?
Yes.
Hamilton? Hardy?
Yes.
Hindi, Jordan. Lopez, Manalo, Matichak. Mellinger,
Yes.
Mickelson. Montano. Piccolotti. Pierce,
Yes.
Ragsdale,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Stevenson,
Yes.
Stone, Vella, Weed, Zichterman, and the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Our next item of business is a special report, and it is, we have two agendas. We're operating, the revised agenda was a green one that was sent out by email. So we're gonna be referring to the green agenda now instead of the blue one. And the first item is a special report, transition plan for CEO, general manager, and the text part of this was forwarded by email, or it's in the yellow packet. All these wonderful colors for us colorblind people, but, anyhow, so the Director Schutte, or not Director, Attorney Schutte, would you like to, give us a special report?
Yes, good evening, board members. I have the next few items, that is the meat of your agenda. So this item was originally an action item for the BPC, and we had presented a plan where they would, this meeting, the board would have appointed Nicole Sankula to this new position of transition manager for the time period when she would be still a temporary employee of the agency and the new CEO would be coming on board. But in the last week, we've had multiple conversations with CalPERS, and they have provided a different path forward. And so that's why you have a yellow packet. I apologize for the updates on Monday, but we wanted to take direction from CalPERS, and their influence is seen throughout everything in that yellow packet. So they, upon our engagement with them, they said, we do not want you to create another position. We would like to keep Ms. Sankula in the classification of CEO GM, but we understand that your new CEO GM is coming on board December 1st, and he will have the sole authority to bind the agency, but she should stay in the classification during that transition period and then move on to retire once CalPERS has completely crossed all the Ts and dotted all the Is. And you have some items later on that address that. So we will make clear in Mr. Smagel's contract that he holds the authority when he transitions to bind the agency, but Ms. Sankula will stay in that classification for what we anticipate to just be December for that period. And just the next slide is a summary of what that role is. This transition plan that we had outlined is being replicated here, that she's gonna give him guidance on policy and programs, strategic advice about ongoing negotiations and historical knowledge, and help him prepare for the BPC meeting, which is in December, and matters related to the board of directors and other strategic advice. So this is not an action item. This is just a report for you to know what the transition plan is for the agency in the next month.
Okay, any comments from the board, or seeing none, any public comment? Probably seeing none. Director Dorr, you have any comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 8A, resolution approving temporary appointment of Nicole Sankula as special counsel to CEO GM and making findings of support for the appointment. And again, this is in the yellow packet or in the email.
So this item was brought to the BPC and has not changed since that time. But as a reminder, for those who have not been through this at your home agencies, upon Nicole Sankula's official retirement, we would like her to remain available to the incoming CEO, Smagel, to provide strategic advice and continuity and historical information as needed. And we would like her to be able to do that as soon as practical and not wait for the typical 180-day break period for a retired annuitant to come back and do some minimal consulting for the agency. So what is before you is a very formal resolution that follows CalPERS requirements to make this determination, because in general, they disfavor retired annuitants, and certainly ones that start immediately. And so there are elements in that resolution and findings that you are all making that time is of the essence, and we need, or CEO Smagel needs to have access to her knowledge and expertise on a very limited basis, starting as soon as possible. And so that is in the resolution, and the recommended action up on the slide is that the board adopt this resolution approving the temporary appointment of Nicole Sankula to the position of special counsel to the CEO GM and making associated findings in support of such an appointment.
Okay, any questions from the board on this? Any questions from the public? Any questions from Director Dorr? Hearing none, is there a motion on this resolution?
So moved.
That was coming from, okay, Director Stevenson. Is there a second?
Second?
Second is Director Pierce. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Andrews?
Aye.
Bro?
Yes for Brisbane and GVMID.
Thank you. Chambers?
Aye.
Cohen?
Aye.
Dorr?
Yes.
Thank you. Duncan?
Yes.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Hindi? Jordan? Lopez? Manalo? Matichek? Mellinger?
Yes.
Mickelson? Montano? Piccolotti? Pierce?
Yes.
Ragsdale?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Stevenson?
Yes.
Stone? Vella? Weed? Zichterman? And the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next item is 8B, approval and adoption of BAWSCA retroactive pay schedules for fiscal year 2020, 2021 through 24-25. And again, this is under that yellow packet. No monies are involved, but Attorney Schutte, would you like to give
Certainly.
staff report?
Yes, so this is the third and final item related to CalPERS, and let's hope we don't have to talk about them again for quite a while. So, as you know, BAWSCA is a participating agency in CalPERS, and CalPERS requires that employees' reportable compensation comply with the PERL, the California Public Employees Retirement Law. And when Ms. Sankula started her retirement process, CalPERS informed BAWSCA that they wanted the board to approve and adopt retroactive pay schedules in a form that was agreeable to them and their interpretation of the regulation for the last 5 years. And our direction from different staff at CalPERS has evolved over time. And so on Monday afternoon, we received the final recommendation on a format that they think would be easiest for them to accept and check off. And so you see before you 10 schedules. There is a, we attempted to try to consolidate our schedules, and they said that is not a good idea. They said we want to have a schedule for July, effective July 1, the fiscal year, that reflects the salary ranges for all the staff except for the CEO class of 1. And then they wanted a new schedule effective September 30th of every year, showing the adjustment in the CEO's salary range, although the rest of the staff would be the same as it was July 1. So that's why you have 10, 2 for each year. And going forward, under the recommendation of the most recent individuals that we spoke with, we will have 2 schedules every year and make sure that they're sent to PERS and up on our website. So what is before you is approving and adopting retroactive schedules, not retroactive pay, just the schedules so that we have a clean record. And at the conclusion of this meeting, provided these are approved and adopted by the board, we will have minutes produced and send them off to PERS. They are expecting them in the next week or so that they can make a final calculation. So the action is that the board approve and adopt the BAWSCA retroactive pay schedules for FY 2021 through FY 24-25.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Is there any comment from directors, including Director Dorr? Since I can't see your
No,
hand.
thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this item? Okay, Director Hamilton moved to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Director Hardy was a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Andrews?
Aye.
Bro?
Yes for Brisbane and GVMID.
Thank you. Chambers?
Aye.
Cohen?
Aye.
Dorr?
Yes.
Thank you. Duncan?
Yes.
Hamilton? Yes. Hardy?
Yes.
Hindi? Jordan? Lopez? Manalo? Matichek? Mellinger?
Yes.
Mickelson? Montano? Piccolotti? Pierce?
Yes.
Ragsdale?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Stevenson?
Yes.
Stone? Vella? I'm sorry. Weed? Zichterman? And the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is a public hearing and consideration of possible adoption of ordinance 2024-01 to increase board member compensation. As such, I'd like to open the public hearing on this item. Okay, Ms. Sankula, or good, Ms. Schutte, BAWSCA Legal Counsel will provide a short presentation on this item. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, so this item has been spoken about at the last few meetings, and at the BPC, we received direction from the BPC to provide the notices so that we could hold the public hearing today. So there were published notices over the last month to prepare for this hearing. So as a reminder to those of you who may have missed some of our previous meetings, the existing board compensation ordinance was originally adopted in 2004 at the creation of the agency, and board members are currently compensated at $100 per day of service, up to 4 days a month. And at the last meeting in September, board directed legal counsel to prepare a revised ordinance for board member compensation that increased the stipend to $200 per day of service and requires board review of member compensation every 5 years. So if the board approves and adopts this increase at today's meeting, the earliest effective date would be January 20th. And that is because once, this was a noticed hearing, once we have the vote, then we have to wait 60 days for it to become effective. And so there is a recommended action, but.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Schutte. I'd now like to ask for public comment as part of this hearing. Are there any members of the public that would wish to comment as a part of this public hearing? Either here or Director Dorr, or anybody at your location?
No.
Okay, no. Okay, if there's no more public comment, I now close the public hearing. Okay, now as the public hearing is closed, I'd like to bring this discussion back to the board, although we have discussion in our prior meetings. As we did in September, to ensure that all board members have the opportunity to speak in a timely manner, all board members once before any board members can offer further comments, we'll keep track. So let everybody speak once if they want. You will not be I will not ask you to speak if you don't volunteer, unlike September. Okay, are there any comments from board members? Okay, Director Hardy.
Thank you. In my attempts to be completely
Okay, I see.
transparent, I want the board to understand that when we voted to put this on it was unanimous to put it to a public hearing. But I have been very clear that most of the work we all do on all our committees for different things, because most of us are elected officials, we don't get paid for. And I'm not convinced you can pay somebody enough to care. And that's what worries me. And also that we have had to balance our budget, we've had to go to some reserves and be careful about our expenses. So I'm not certain voting ourselves a raise is a good look, and that's what bothers me. And so I would personally not be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, Director Dorr, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. I am concerned that the board is, in previous conversation, it's been spoken about that would this increase the access of folks to be able to serve on this board. And if we truly want to make this board more accessible and more equitable for folks who would like to participate, I think there are many other things we could explore doing. And I've mentioned them before, but changing the time of the board policy committee meeting, for example, so they're after working hours, thinking about the location and making sure that's an equitable distance for everyone, and things like that. And for those reasons, and also because we are looking at rate increases and the balanced budget items that Director Hardy mentioned, I also will not be supporting this motion.
Okay, next, I see Director Snyder. That's you.
Thank you. I think I've argued this twice before. I'm going to tell another story. I recently traveled for the city of Millbrae to Japan on my own expenses, but I do have a 97-year-old mom at home, and it cost me $160 a day to have someone come in and be with her on that time. You know, that's what we do as elected officials, and that I can still afford to do that. But pretty soon I'll be picking up all my medical costs and everything else, and finances change. My city recently went from changing the city council salary of $345 a month that was based back in the 1990s to whatever the state law allowed us. I think it's going to be $900. It won't impact me. It'll be for new city council members. But if you are on that area where you have to pay for child care or senior care or care for a loved one that's just gotten out of the hospital, it can prevent you from participating, regardless of whether you're doing it out of love or not. So I do think that, you know, it's kind of funny. We all serve on a number of regional boards, and I watch how the city council members typically are really good at showing, and the board of supervisors who get paid a good salary are the ones that typically miss the regional meetings. And it bugs me a little bit because they get paid and we don't. And I was at a LAFCO meeting for 4 hours last night only to have my issues sent over on that. So I would support this. I would hope that all of us, we may all be in a good fiscal place right now, but that can change with one bad medical situation. It can change with one situation with your family members. This gives the flexibility. For those of us who do not want the money, we can always turn it back into the organization. But frankly, in the big picture of things, it's not a lot of money. Thank you.
Director Bellinger. And then Jeff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As I stated at the previous meeting, while I do believe that the increase is justified, I would prefer to see this done as part of the annual budget, and so we'll be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Matichak.
Thank you. My thoughts exactly. I wasn't supportive of doing this, and I'm still not. But if we are going to do it, I would prefer to have it done as part of the annual budget cycle, so we're not dipping into our reserves. Thank you.
Director Snyder, yours goes down. Any other comments from the board? Director Weed, wait till you get your microphone.
Thank you. I was here when we established the $100 amount 20 years ago. It was a modest amount then. $200 today remains a modest amount of money. I would encourage a yes vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Director Pierce.
I really have a question. If the motion is voted down, will it still come back in 5 years to be considered, or is it taken as a whole?
Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that in advance. I think when the mover, if one of you wants to make a motion and divide the action that way, you certainly can do that.
If it goes down,
I-
or
it-
do you
it
want to
seems-
wait?
It seems to me that as soon as somebody brings it up, if this goes down, if somebody can bring it up again, we have to go through the process again. And, 1 year, 5 years, 6 months, 20 years, well, it's what it is what it is.
I think the notice on the agenda is sufficient to, strip out the 5-year renewal as a separate item tonight.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Oh, okay. Go ahead. Director Cohen.
Yes, thank you.
My
Sorry,
eyes aren't as good as they used to be.
I wasn't here for previous discussions, so first I'm going to ask a question. I mean, we're talking about what I think somebody else mentioned, a modest amount. I want to understand in the context of our budget, because we seem to be talking about magnitudes to me that are not equivalent when we talk about budget magnitude. So can someone answer, I don't know who's answering, can answer the question about what this would cost us and how this potentially would affect the budget as we come back with the budget next year.
Yes, so the estimated cost is $21,000 a year, and our current budget is, say, $5.5 million a year.
Okay. We have these conversations a lot in different bodies about giving ourselves increases. This is a very distasteful thing to do. People don't like it. On the other hand, we get in these positions where it goes 20 years without making adjustments. There's a value to this 5-year interval automatically happening because it kind of forces the conversation without somebody having to be forward enough to say, I want to bring this up now. So I think that there's value in making adjustments periodically and having that be somewhat automatic. I know our council has taken it completely out of our own hands and created an independent commission to decide how to increase salaries because most of the time when you're being watched, you don't want to vote yes. On the other hand, I do think that in voluntary positions like this and many others, it's not a bad idea to make sure that we are keeping up at least somewhat with inflation and giving people a feeling that they're valued for their time. So, this is a modest amount to me. It's not. I understand the question about bringing it up with the budget. It's not clear to me that this has a severe impact on the budget. Certainly, if we want to do that, instead of doing it today and do it when the budget comes up, we should have some kind of motion today to do that because, again, this is not something that's routine in the budget that'll come forward. So we would have to have a mechanism by which it will come forward in the budget process later. So we have to think that through today since it's our action item for today. So presumably a motion should be made to either accept the recommendation as is, separate the recommendation to do one of the two things in that, but not both, or to bring forward a recommendation at some set later date as part of the additional process. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, Director, any first-timers? Director Piccolotti.
Oh.
Let's do a switch. Green button on the bottom, or?
Obviously, I don't play with these too much. I think a motion could state effective July 1, which covers that in itself. It also covers a couple things that I've heard about this should be done with the budget. So any motion could say effective July 1.
Okay, Director Hardy.
Well, I'm ready to make a motion. You can, and I know the term is to bifurcate. We can split the two issues and have two different votes. So I'd like to make a motion to
Can we
look.
finish public comment before we have a motion?
You close the,
I haven't closed,
oh, okay.
I mean, I've closed the public hearing, but
Yeah.
before we make a motion, I'd like to get everybody at a state of peace. Director Hamilton.
Oh, there. Thank you. Didn't know it was off. I like the idea of pushing this forward and sort of taking the action tonight, but making it effective on July 1 to coincide with the budget. That's my position. Thank you.
Although that was really a motion we had in September that we went against, but, okay, Director Hamilton, you're done? Okay, Director Snyder.
So
Director,
it's okay, we share a mic.
well, okay, go ahead.
Oh, you were.
You go ahead, Director Dragsville.
Yeah.
You're a first timer, so you should
I
go.
thought that was left over. So, I'm sorry, Chair Chambers, did you say something about September? And because I did like Director Piccolotti's and Hamilton's idea about the July. Were you saying that that's not possible?
Well, all I'm saying is we've already tried that once and it failed, but we can try again. So it's whatever,
I think the notice is sufficient that you could try that.
okay.
You know, we've notified the public that this is the topic for today,
So
effective
whatever's
date.
good.
I would be in support of the increase with a July start date to coincide with the
Okay.
budget.
Director Snyder?
I'm counting votes here. My comment was to Director Cohen. We discussed doing it as a mid-year budget as opposed to an annual budget, both at the board meeting 2 months ago and at the policy meeting. Most of us who come from local government do mid-year budget augments, and again, it's $21,000 out of the whole scope of that. However, as I'm looking at the room and I would rather we do it, we get it done, we move on that. But if it takes a second vote to get more votes on it, then that's the way we work together as a team. But I think we talked twice before about, let's just get it done and move on to the other business we have.
Okay. Director Piccolotti? That's it. Okay, now, I think we're in order for a motion.
As I said, I'd like to bifurcate the situation, and I'd like to first to make a motion that we review this every 5 years, no matter what, and that this be taken up in the budgeting process. That's my motion for next year's budget.
Is there a second? We'd like to have a second before we have a question. Director Mellinger?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Mellinger. Discussion on the motion.
So
Director Snyder?
my question on the motion is, it could be read two ways. It could be whether we vote to increase the stipend period or not tonight. It cannot be addressed again for another 5 years.
No.
Or it
Her-
could
her
come back
motion,
the next time.
We can bifurcate. We're gonna do this motion, and then we're gonna do a motion, do we want to increase it $200?
Okay, so
Same
if this-
time, because it's in the same notice in the public hearing.
Thank you. So this motion is simply every 5 years as a matter of direction, this will come back. But it does not preclude any action between now and when a decision is made. It's more, I'm worried that we won't talk about this for another 5 years.
No, the motion is to, if anything is done, that it be for the next year's budget, and that this be something that we go forward, that we review every 5 years, minimum.
Okay. If it's just that, then I can support that motion.
Okay, Director Burrow?
Thank you, sir. Could I just ask legal counsel, do you feel that we've got enough words in the motion that you're satisfied? Is there anything we're missing before we move that along?
I understand your intent. This is simply that every 5 years, in coordination with the budget process, board compensation will be brought back to the board for consideration. It'll be in the schedule of policy actions, and the CEO will bring that to the board without any direction from the chair or anybody else.
So you don't need a start date or an end date or anything in there, I just want to make sure that if we take a vote on it,
Yes,
you
because
feel like
we
you-
will,
okay,
I
thank
would
you.
say, yeah, we will calendar it, and our assistant to the secretary of the board has a calendar of policy actions.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion?
I actually have a question.
Okay,
Does that preclude
Okay.
this fiscal year? Like, would that be, I mean, absent the next part of the vote, but if that, say there's no further action on compensation increases, the expectation is it's gonna come back for the budget this fiscal year? Would that be the start of this 5-year process?
So I think it would be worthwhile for Director Hardy to just add a clarification. My opinion is that this fiscal year is year 1 in your cycle of 5.
Thank you. I will definitely take council's opinion, which we pay her for, and she's very good. And I always try to do less words, but I'm not an attorney.
okay, Director Cohen.
I'm sorry,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm still kind of asking for clarification.
Director Cohen,
Oh,
let me.
sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Jordan hadn't spoken.
I'd just like some clarification. If we have a public hearing scheduled that's been written, why are we taking another motion first from the floor rather than completing what we've scheduled and told the public that we're going to do? I mean, something seems backwards to me. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it seems like, you can't just take another motion from the floor and do that first.
It's the same top. Attorney, would you like to clarify?
The other item about increasing board compensation absolutely has to be voted on tonight as well. But I do not see a prohibition on bifurcating the motion.
Okay,
They both
Well,
concepts need to be voted on.
okay. Director Cohen, or that answered your question?
I think that helped. I mean, it means that there's still another vote to be had.
Yes.
I guess
Absolutely, we need
usually
another vote.
the way the budget process works is there's a recommended budget that comes forward from staff that's discussed by the body. Is the recommendation here that every 5 years there's a proposal automatically to change the stipend, or is it just mean that coincident with that discussion there would be an additional item brought forward at the budget time, started with the first one being in 2025, and then every 5 years after that, that's automatically agendized? Is that the recommendation?
My understanding is that this would be your first consideration, so 5 years from now, as part of the budget process, it would be brought coincident with the budget process. So when what I would do is I would bring it as part of the preliminary budget in March to get direction from the board so that it could be rolled into the numbers that then you would act on in the subsequent month, right?
Though you'd probably have to start.
Probably even
early in
January
March
because of the
to get it
ordinance,
into the
right?
budget.
But that would be the process, right? So, but not for tonight's action would count as the first one, whichever way it goes, and it would be 5 years from now, it'd be rolled into that regular budget process.
Okay. Director Weed, you were thinking. Yes. Yes. Director Snyder, I'd like to be able to get to a vote sometime, so we can do the second vote. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm still confused. I'm losing my Japanese halo here. I am concerned that we've had 2 meetings where the majority of the vote was to go ahead with an increase. The discussion, I'll differ a little bit with Policy Chair Hardy on what I thought the intent was from our last policy meeting. That aside, if we vote on this 5-year motion, and now in terms of raising it to $200 becomes a separate issue. Will it happen effective January, or will it come back for discussion for the fiscal year 25-26?
Well,
My concern then is that's actually fiscal year 2 from what the city attorney just said, that we're currently in year 1. So I'm just a little bit concerned in the timeline of how that rolls out by taking an action on 5-year before taking an action on the vote. And this goes to Director Jordan's comment. Tonight, I thought we came in voting whether or not we're going to increase or not. And now we've added a complication ahead of that. That's how I feel right now, and I'm confused.
As the maker of the motion, I want to explain what bifurcate means, because both of these, I'm sorry. Both of these were in the motion. When I made a motion, I bifurcated and pulled out one that I felt that I could support the part of that. And that's why I can, and that does not change the fact that we can and should vote on the rest of the other part that was publicly noticed.
We need to have a second motion, but to finish the
Chair?
second, we need to do the first. Okay, Director Dorr.
Hi, this is interesting to experience outside of that room, but I'm curious to address some of the confusions in the room. Could someone propose an alternate motion that is what is on the table right now? What was originally in the agenda?
We have a motion that's been seconded right now, so we should either withdraw the motion or vote or amend. We can't have a competing motion until we resolve the motion in front of us.
Okay, because I'd be willing to move, if depending on, I'd be willing to move the original motion if there was a decision to turn down the current one.
Can we, is there further discussion? Or do we have a motion that's been seconded, it's on the floor. Can we vote on that motion?
Request
Okay.
that the attorney read the motion so that we know exactly what it is.
Okay. Do you want
Okay, yes, I will
attorney to
do
read
that.
it?
So this is a motion to require review of board member compensation on a 5-year interval in coordination with the budget process. The current fiscal year is year 1 for purposes of implementing the motion.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, I'd like to vote on this motion. Seeing no other discussion, please do a roll call.
Okay. Andrews?
Aye.
Bro?
Yes, for Brisbane and GVMID.
Chambers?
Yes.
Cohen?
Aye.
Dorr?
Yes.
Thank you. Duncan?
Yes.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes?
Hindi? Jordan? Lopez? Manalo? Matichak? Mellinger?
Yes.
Mickelson? Montano? Piccolotti? Pierce?
Yes.
Ragsdale?
Yes.
Schneider?
No.
Stevenson?
Yes.
Stone?
Yes.
Vella? Weed?
Aye.
And Zichterman? And the motion passes.
Okay, now we should have a motion concerning the increase, proposed increase. Director Mellinger?
Point of personal privilege, it's actually Mellinger, but you just have to remember that I'm always angry.
I'm sorry.
I move that we adopt the increase effective July 1st.
I'll second.
Who's, name for a second?
3 times. Choose your Tom.
Tom's have to get the
Director Piccolotti, because I heard from that side there, you know,
So
better ear.
Piccolotti was the second?
I think, right?
We'll
One of them.
say so.
Okay.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on this to have the increase to $200 as of
July 1, I'll go.
July 1. Director Weed.
Actually, as the maker of the motion, perhaps I could say a couple words.
Okay.
I think that this is a reasonable compromise between ensuring, that this is done as part of an annual budgeting process and not done mid-year. While I doubt that the $21,000 will impose a substantial hardship on the budget, were it to do so, the CEO would have ample time to inform us and we could course correct. I do believe, as many of my colleagues have argued, that the increase is justified given that it has been some 20 years without one. And that I do believe that will also increase feasibility for members of governing agencies that are a part of BAWSCA to participate. And so I respectfully urge my colleagues I vote. I think this strikes a balance between all of the interests involved. Thank you.
Okay, Director Dorr has her hand. Director Reed.
All right, thank you. We've been discussing this for about 2 years. If we wait until July of next year, it'll be 21 years, not 20. It was June of this year that we reached the 20 mark. So then the motion, as I understand then, will allow us to do a 105% increase in July of this coming year, correct?
No, sir. The motion is for $200 effective July 1.
Why would we not follow the state law of 5% per year, simple interest? Right now it would be at 3.5% over the 20 years if you had compounded interest, which is a very nominal amount. So I am confused as to why we wouldn't allow us to do the 21-year 105%.
Allison? Allison, would you like to address the
Yeah.
concern over the motion made?
On the calculation, Director Weed is correct. However, our notice and our public hearing was for $200. So I am okay moving the date out to July because I don't think that is substantial to affect our notice to the public. But changing the dollar amount, even though you are correct that is in compliance with state law, we have provided a noticed hearing with a specific dollar amount.
Okay. Director Dorr?
Yes, thank you. Director Schneider's comments earlier about this really moved me and have compelled me to change my mind to be supportive of this item. I will note I sincerely hope the board will continue to explore other avenues to increase the accessibility of this board, especially the timing of that board policy committee meetings, and find other ways to make sure that beyond compensation, that all is being done to ensure that representatives from the community are able to participate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Director Hardy?
I will just point out and remind all the directors that you can, even at this time, no matter what, if you have actual expenses, that those can be turned in and you can be compensated for those. Thank you. Reimbursed is the correct term. Thank you. Too many meetings today.
Okay. Director Snyder?
This topic, for anybody who wasn't at the policy committee or the previous board meeting, part of the discussion of upping the stipend was so that people did not have to do the travel reimbursements, which are more impactful on staff time. I'm trying to channel Vice Chair Ron Vella, who usually brings this point up at those. So it's just a counterpoint to a stipend versus having to do that, having to do reimbursements, which take up more of everybody's time.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Should we do a roll call?
Okay. Andrews?
Aye.
Bro?
No for Brisbane and GVMID.
Okay. Chambers?
No.
Cohen?
Aye.
Dorr?
Yes.
Thank you. Duncan?
Yes.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Hardy?
No.
Hindi? Jordan? Lopez? Manalo? Matichak? Mellinger?
Aye.
Mickelson? Montano? Piccolotti? Pierce?
No.
Ragsdale?
Yes.
Schneider?
No.
Stevenson?
Yes.
Stone?
Yes.
Vella? Weed?
Aye.
Zichterman? Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. The motion passes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Our next item, CEO reports. Ms. Ankula.
The first CEO report is going to be given by Christina Tang, right, Christina? Yeah, thank you.
The liability funding.
Yep.
OPEB
The
liability.
OPEB liability.
Good evening, everyone. So this basically provides you an update about BAWSCA's OPEB liability and our current funded status. So BAWSCA has participated in CalPERS trust program called SERPT since April 2014 in order to pre-fund our OPEB liability. And BAWSCA's contributions made to SERPT allows the agency to generate investment incomes for future retiree benefits and reduce future cash flow requirements and OPEB liabilities. So since 2014, BAWSCA has been fully funding the annual OPEB expenses. Our 24-25 operating budget includes a contribution to SERPT in amount of $80,000. As of June 30, 2024, BAWSCA's unfunded OPEB liability was $1,182,811, based on the latest actuarial valuation. And this amount is estimated to be paid off by 2036, based on a discount rate of 5.5%. So this slide provides our current funded status as of June 30, 2024, based on the latest information provided by SERPT. So it shows our total contributions made. Our disbursement so far has been 0, and our served account management expenses being charged, and also our investment earnings being accrued into our account. So basically, as of now, our total assets accumulated in the account are $1,455,040. So these amounts has been invested in the served account based on an average actual interest earnings of 5.7%, as circled in red. So this amount is higher than our discount rate, basically used for our latest actuarial valuation, which is 5.5%. However, it's slightly less than the 6.1% SERPT 20-year expected rate of return, which was recently increased by CalPERS from 5.5%. So according to CalPERS, basically the longer you invest your funds in the SERPT account, the more the funds will gradually, get gradually closer to their expected long-term rate of return. So as of June 30, 2024, our net, basically unfunded OPEB liability was $1,182,811, which is estimated to be paid off by 2036. And our current funded status is at 52%. So this amount represents the assessments of the efficiency of assets to cover our total liability. So our report also provides an update of SPUC's funded status on the OPEB. And so the slides summarize that update. So PUC, they participate in the single employer defined benefit plan based on pay-as-you-go. In addition, they also contribute to a retiree health care trust fund. So as of June 30, 2023, so San Francisco's net OPEB liability was $3.7 million, which is estimated to be paid off by 2047 based on a discount rate of 7%. So PUCs they share approximately 6.32% of San Francisco's unfunded liability, or in the amount of $247.9 million, which includes $158.3 million for the water enterprise and $16.3 million for the Hatchie Water. So for the context, so PUC's 23-24 operating budget is about $1.69 million, which includes their share for contribution to the trust fund in the amount of $17.6 million. So last year, BAWSCA consulted with its auditor and legal counsel in order to understand the potential risk of San Francisco's unfunded liabilities to the member agencies. And we recently have confirmed that their opinion remained the same. Basically, they believe San Francisco's unfunded liability is an obligation of San Francisco, and it's not BAWSCA agency's liability. And there is no accounting guidelines that would require the agency to report San Francisco's unfunded liability on the agency's financial statements. So BAWSCA agency pays their share of San Francisco's operation expenses from which they receive benefits from through our wholesale water rates. And so BAWSCA agency, they also basically pays their share of San Francisco's labor cost, including the OPEB and pension benefits, based on the calculations and also according to the terms specified in the water supply agreement. So that concludes my update on the OPEB side. So now we're moving on to the pension side. So BAWSCA offers its employee and retirees defined pension benefits through CalPERS. So every year, CalPERS provides BAWSCA an actuarial valuation report that would include the latest funded status and also minimum required employer contribution for the next fiscal year. So BAWSCA's 24-25 operating budget includes our CalPERS required employer contribution of $281,625, which is approximately 5% of our annual budget. And as of June 30, 2023, BAWSCA's unfunded pension liability was $1,248,057, which is estimated to be paid off by 2044 based on a discount rate of 6.8%. So this slide provides a summary of our funded status as of June 30, 2023. So both the projected benefits and the accrued liabilities are in actuarial value. And for the assets accumulated, it's based on market value. So if you look at the number I pointed to, which is the $1.2 million that represent our current unfunded accrued liability, those represent the liabilities that have been earned by the employees but have not been funded. So based on that, our funded ratio is about 80.2%. And this is calculated by subtracting the market value of the assets from our total accrued liability. So again, our report also includes update of PUC's pension liability funded status and also summarized on this slide. So PUC, they participate in the cost sharing multiple employer defined benefit administered by San Francisco. In addition, they also participate in the replacement benefit plan for any portion of their mandatory retirement allowance that exceeds the IRS 415 limits. So under the San Francisco's pension system, their current funding, it's based on pay-as-you-go. As of June 30, 2023, San Francisco's net pension liability was $3.6 million, based on the discount rate of 7.2%. And San Francisco's share is approximately 7.4% of San Francisco's unfunded liability, or in the amount of $265.9 million. So that amount includes $152 million for the water enterprise and $19 million for the Hatchie Water. So for the context purposes, so PUC's 23-24 operating budget is about 1.69 million. That includes their share of the contribution to San Francisco's pension system in about 48.7 million. So this slide, it's the same slide that I just presented to you. So basically, BAWSCA's auditors and legal counsel believe that San Francisco's unfunded liability, it's their obligation, and they are not, so non-BAWSCA member agency is required to report San Francisco's unfunded liability on their financial statements. So BAWSCA will continue monitor San Francisco's both pension and OPEB unfunded liability funded status, and we will include that in our next annual report to the board. That concludes my report. I'm going back to Nicole.
Thank you. Then I think the next part is, John, it's concerned the OPEB. Okay.
Good evening, Chair.
Wait, Tom.
Oh, please, let, someone's going to make comment on this. I'll wait for the comment.
Should we do comments at the end or now?
Okay.
If it's on the OPEB, do it now.
Are we on OPEB? Yes. I recall a number of years ago, the finance director from San Francisco came up and said that they were using the IRS rate, which is applied to investor-owned utilities and other private entities, of 4.4% discount rate. And they had a multi-billion-dollar unfunded liability, which they were not funding, because they were not funding their OPEB. It was a pay-as-you-go for the. By raising the discount rate to 7.41%, they have effectively cut their unfunded liability in half. Those numbers don't go away. And my experience at my time here as one of the charter members of BAWSCA is that there will be a way that we will find ourselves paying for those additional costs. We did a supplement, which came to hundreds of millions of dollars borrowed and given to San Francisco for monies that were not part of the calculation early on. So it's worth being aware of it. When I was on the policy committee, I made a pitch and got support from the Hayward director to look into it, and it came as a surprise to the BAWSCA staff that we had a $2 million unfunded liability. 2044 is a long reach. Our district has a policy of paying everything up by 2034, and we're making those annual contributions to expedite it. And then one of the most basic responsibilities you have as a director is to make sure that your retirees have the money in the account to pay for their bills, particularly when we have no idea where medical costs are running and going. We'll probably be, in any case, we're probably going to undershoot. So, is worthy of additional thought. I encourage us to look for additional protections that this multi-billion-dollar liability on the part of San Francisco, 70% of it doesn't end up in our lap. And I would encourage BAWSCA to establish a policy that moves the date of full funding from 2044 and cuts that in half to another 10 years, not 20 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Hardy?
Thank you. First off, Christine is wonderful with the numbers, but I wanted to go back to, I guess it was the second page with numbers, and I wanted to understand the context of the reality, because D was saying unfunded accrued liability was B minus C, which is some basic math, and then the funded ratio was C divided by B, more basic math. Yes, thank you. I'm trying to understand, is that a good number or a bad number? Because contextual-wise, you went right through it, and a funded ratio of 80.2%.
Yeah. So
what does that mean to us?
Sure. I believe about maybe like approximately 5 years ago, BAWSCA actually went through a comparison survey for a number of, if not all, most of the member agencies, regards to their funded ratio on the pension side. And I believe our funded ratio, it's about average, like pretty close to the average of everyone else funded ratio. And also better than like half of them. So I would say this, this number compared to most public agencies, this, financially, this looking good.
Okay. Mellinger? I'm trying.
Thank you. I would just say that I echo Director Weed's sentiment that we should be aiming to reduce that timeline. I'm not sure if having it is the right number, but I would 20 years, 2044 is a long way out, and I would certainly be interested in seeing options to accelerate the timeline for paying that down. Thank you.
Okay. Director Weed, is that supposed to be up or down? Okay, any other comments on, okay, go ahead.
I'm curious, since we save money every year by prepaying our pension liabilities. Do we know if SFPUC is doing that? Are we getting that benefit of prepaying and making that savings?
So for San Francisco, as you see here, so they are doing pay-as-you-go, and in the meantime, they make contributions to their SFERS, their own retirement system. So that, yes, they are. But as far as I know, they are not
prepaying.
They're not
prepaying their current year at the beginning of the year or at the end of the previous fiscal year. Which is how we save considerable money on doing that. And I would assume most other cities are prepaying.
They run their own program. They don't use CalPERS.
I'm sorry?
They don't use CalPERS. They use their own retirement system.
They have their own.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no mix. I guess then I would look at that saying 2044 does seem to be a far way down there, unless is that done so that our ratepayers are going to see fewer big hikes that way, or what has happened historically, since our ratepayers are already feeling like they pay too much? How does that impact what they feel, even if the numbers are only pennies?
Meaning from San Francisco's payments to its pension?
Well, to what we're built into paying this.
We pay it,
wholesale rate.
as Christina said, you pay in real time what are the costs each year. I can assure you that San Francisco is not thinking about its wholesale customers when it's figuring out what it's going to pay into its retirement. They just don't. It's just not part of that calculation. So, and my understanding is the PUC's, the rules that the PUC follows are actually set through City Hall, right, as a department of the city and county of San Francisco. So the PUC itself also has no control over that. Is that correct, Christina?
That's correct.
Yes. So these rules are set through City Hall for the entire city government, and they trickle down through the PUC and then trickle down to us as a cost each year, whatever those costs are, in the wholesale revenue requirement. And that is what you pay.
Because wholesale customer gets charged for San Francisco's actual expenses. So in their labor cost, what's actual, like, as a PUC's actual share of San Francisco's OPEB and the pension benefits, wholesale customer will share part of that. So it's all based on actual expenses.
It's just a different system that I'm familiar with.
Correct.
Okay. Director Zichterman.
Thank you, Chair. This is way out of my league, this high finance stuff, but I just have a couple of requests, I guess. If our auditors are saying we don't have to show this San Francisco liability in our financial statements, that's nice. But would another question be more appropriate? Could San Francisco's liability come to BAWSCA through the wholesale rate? That would be really interesting to me. And then second, I really respect Director Weed's concern about this coming to us, and I think it'd be worthwhile to look at least financially, an option in our before our next budgeting year of what it would do to our costs if we were to accelerate our own pension and OPEB payments to reduce the time frame that it takes to catch up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from directors? Okay, Andrews, I can't, all I see is what's standing up, okay.
Would this also be an item for the board policy committee to review prior to us? Can the committee review this as well and bring a recommendation?
So if I might suggest, I do think it's appropriate to consider it as part of the budget discussion. And so, and so what you will have come February at the BPC, which is kind of the first time you hear from the new CEO about what's incorporated in the budget, could be some options for what that would mean to accelerate and get feedback in February, and then continue that conversation through the budget development process. That would be a really well-timed, so that you can incorporate it into what is your final decision in May and whatever the budget impact is of that.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, Director Ragsdale.
Really quick, I'd be in support of that too, having BPC look at that in February. I think it's definitely a concern worth looking at, accelerating that. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on? No, yes.
Nicholson.
Okay, Director Mickelson.
I just want to reinforce what I've been hearing here. I am not happy with the 20-year time horizon. I would like policy to look at it, bring it back to the full board. And ultimately, I do feel pension liabilities will come back to us. Speak into the microphone, please.
Can you speak in the microphone?
I am concerned about this pension liability coming back to us in the form of rates, and I'm not happy with the 20-year time horizon. So I think we're developing a consensus here, so I just want to add my voice to that. Thank you.
Okay, any other, Director Bellinger?
I just asked for a recess before we move to those proposals.
5 minutes? Okay, let's have a 5-minute recess, as I have 8:07, so we'll go to 8:12.
Perfect.
Sanford's, our pension.
Thank you, Chair Chambers and board members. I'm going to give a very brief update of the Los Vaqueros Reservoir project status. As folks have read in the CEO letter, we provided a short update, but there's also in your communications packet some letters and maybe a news brief about the project. So it's certainly on the minds of us in the water business, water industry. Before I tell you a little bit about what's in the news, I just wanted to remind you a bit about what that project is. Just a bit of background to help set the stage. The Los Vaqueros expansion project was envisioned, or at least the one that we're currently involved with, was envisioned over 10 years ago. It was seen as a project that would improve Bay Area water supply reliability and water quality. And this expansion was also seen as a way to protect delta fisheries and provide some additional ecosystem benefits. So it wasn't just a water supply project, it had benefits to some of the wildlife refuges and ecosystem as well. If we look at the components that are part of the project, there's an existing reservoir there now. A current expansion about 10 years ago was completed that had 160,000 feet in terms of storage. But this proposed new expansion would take that storage to 275,000 acre feet. So essentially it would create, or it would have created a new place to store water, or more water storage, I guess I should say. There was also some infrastructure that was proposed about as part of this expansion. One of the most significant pieces was a large pipeline that kind of stretched from the northern part of Contra Costa County to the southern part. That was called the Transfer Bethany Pipeline. It kind of hooked up not just some of the, if you call them water courses or streams, but more of the existing infrastructure that's in place within Contra Costa County. It provided another avenue to hook up that water infrastructure. There's also pump stations and pipelines that were part of the Los Vaqueros expansion project. So anyway, it was a fairly robust project that included a lot of pieces to it. That's kind of the way to look at it. One of the large water districts, Contra Costa Water District, is a central figure to the project. They kind of championed it. They came up with the concept, but they got a lot of project partners as well to be excited and encouraged in it. One of them was the San Francisco Public Utility Commission. BAWSCA certainly supported the concept of the expansion in its early phases in the 2010s through the early 2020s. But there were others. East Bay Mud, Alameda County Water District was both through BAWSCA and an individual partner, Valley Water. So there's 8 or 9 partners, and there was a lot of interest in it. A significant portion, though, of the project lies within Contra Costa Water District's service area. So they are the linchpin, if you will. It's essentially their service area, and the existing facilities are their facilities for the most part. If I look at how much the project cost or was being funded, a lot of monies were awarded to the project as the proposal was brought forward. California Water Commission, through one of the earlier water bonds, had monies that they could make available. This project was awarded $478 million of state funding, one of the largest awards made by the state. And also money was awarded through the federal government, about $172 million. And there was also appropriated money that was sought as well. So that number was growing a little bit as the project moved forward. So over half of the money to construct it was going to be coming from state or federal sources. Now, just a bit of reality check here. These are funding monies that were received, but we haven't really spent them yet. The project, the partners anyway, have not moved it forward to the point where those monies were being spent to the significant level. So let's talk about what's happened this year. And Contra Costa Water District, their board of directors directed its general manager to develop an approach to end CCWD's participation in the project. Now, if you think about my earlier slide, I said they're the linchpins. All the existing facilities are in their service area, so you may scratch your head and say, I thought they were the ones that were the big proponent of it and brought all of the other partners, including us and SFPUC together. Well, in this year, or leading up to this year, the Contra Costa's board made the request because they concluded that the project was no longer viable. And they made that decision based on the fact that costs have gone up. They project now the construction costs would at least be double, or more than $1 billion more. And there was other worries that they had about if they took the dam out of service during this new construction expansion, that reservoir currently serves CCWD's needs during a time of drought, so that water supply was at risk during droughts. And so anyway, they had their issues, and they directed their general manager to look at that approach. How could we get out of the project? Now, all the other partner agencies in LBE were concerned about this possibility or this proposal. So they issued a subsequent statement, the JPA did for LBE, urging CCWD to reconsider this and to, as part of that letter, which is part of your info packet, to consider that maybe this project could be reconfigured. Maybe we could look at doing the project in a different order. It theoretically had a lot of water supply benefit, and walking away from a project regionally that had a lot of water supply benefit is a big concern that the JPA had due to all the uncertainty in the future about how our water supplies are going to be put at risk. Regardless of those comments, the CCWD board in November of 2024 directed or voted unanimously to take action that effectively ends the LBE project. That resolution that was passed, or that action that was passed by CCWD's board, said two things, or directed their staff to do two things. One is to work with the California Water Commission to essentially eliminate or back out of that $478 million worth of funding that was awarded. So they're currently now, from what I understand, CCWD staff is having those discussions with the state. And secondly, they directed CCWD staff to work with the Joint Powers Authority that was established for LBE to dissolve the partnership. So what's next? It's BAWSCA's opinion that it could take as long as at least a year to close out the LBE project. There's just a lot to do to close down a project. There's been engineers that have been hired to do designs. There's monies that have been spent on the project. There's records that have been created that need to be saved. So closing down on a project, closing out the JPA is going to take a significant amount of time. During this next year, if it takes that long, the JPA will need to remain in place. So we do not imagine that the JPA will be dissolved until such time as all of that activity has gone through. I guess ultimately this project could continue in some form or fashion in the future. Though one thing that we need to remember is that most of the project facilities are located within the service area of Contra Costa Water District. So without their willingness of some degree or manner, resurrecting this project could be a challenge, and probably would be a challenge unless conditions change or the elected will changes. So for right now, the project is essentially going through a year's worth of unwinding. So that's my summary of the LBE project. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the status of it.
Okay, questions, Director Hardy?
Thank you. Just for my information, the CCWD, are they an elected board or are they an appointed board? And having just finished going on the Anderson Dam tour, in fact, I told everybody I went on the dam tour. My husband said, don't say that. But I went on the tour of Anderson Dam, and that got pushed to the forefront because it got shut down by the federal government. But their costs have almost tripled. And they know that, and they even had problems because regulations were changed as they were working on the spillway. So I understand the concern. Everything I've heard is saying this is dead on arrival, but I'm just wondering if this board is elected or appointed. Thank you.
Sure, Director Hardy, the board is elected at CCWD. They have districts, probably akin to some of the cities.
Be closer to the microphone.
Yeah, can you hear me now? I know this microphone has been going in and out. It is an elected board, and they have districts. And so I will mention that. And then the other thing that I did want to mention too is that certainly this project could see life again, depending on if there's situations within CCWD's water supply or the regional water supply that calls for a great desire or need for putting in new storage. So one of the reasons to archive all the drawings is because this might be needed in the future. Who knows?
Okay, Director Jordan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So do we know how much we're on the hook for through San Francisco, or is it embedded in the water rates?
There's information that I can share maybe through our GM in terms of how much money San Francisco has spent on the project to date. I want to say it's slightly less than $5 million, as all the other partners have provided some monies each year towards the design and the partnership type activities. And also I'll mention that there's a bit of that grant monies, that state monies that have been spent by the parties. I think it was roughly around $24 million. And one of the issues that will be sorted out over the next year as they dissolve the JPA is to define who has the financial responsibilities and how they'll be split up. So to the best of my knowledge, that hasn't been decided yet. And in terms of that $5 million, yes, it's been part of, sort of our water rates over the last few years because that was part of their CIP.
Okay, I believe Director Weed has a question.
When this came before BAWSCA as well as the ACWD board, I was possibly one of the sole no votes. There were aspects of this which would qualify for a chapter in the rewrite of the California Desert, or Cadillac Desert. There were three options available to the proponents. One was the Bethany Transfer Pipeline only, which is a good idea and should be even larger than proposed. Operational storage or dedicated storage. The operational storage element dropped off. But those options were not provided to BAWSCA. They were picked up by Santa Clara, and they proceeded to look at all three options. It wasn't prevented, and it was denied when it came to our board at ACWD. There is a water plan, and it goes back to the days of the Purfield Canal, to build a 1 million acre-foot reservoir near the transfer station. The record of decision 2004 would allow a 500,000 acre-foot reservoir, and with some saddle dams to go to 1 million acre feet. But you have to understand the politics of Contra Costa and the water district. They have a strong board principle and not to allow any of their water to go to Southern California. They've denied membership of districts in the Fresno area in this participation because they were too far south. LV1, the first raise, and then the later raise were paid for by the ratepayers of Contra Costa. Other participants didn't come in because they didn't have a link. Contra Costa ratepayers were paying the highest service charge in the state of California. The unstated plan, which was signed off, and at least in general principle by the general managers of all the major districts, would be that the incoming participants would reimburse Contra Costa for 40% of their cost of LV1, LV2, and the watershed, adjusted for inflation. Contra Costa was destined to get a more than 100% reimbursement and clear the deck for their ratepayers on their service charge. There were elements that 40,000 acre feet a year were going to go to the grasslands district near Las Banas for the ducks. It's pretty good quality water to be parked at San Luis, 250 parcels. When you go to Las Banas and you say, what type of water do you need? They say, well, we can get by with 2,500 TDS. So we're putting some really expensive water far exceeding the needs of the environmental element. The reason the state participation was so high on Prop 1 is it had to be public benefit. And public benefit is environmental. I was in an early meeting where they raised the cost somewhat surprisingly because they didn't have the data for them, from 900 million to 1.4 billion. It grew later from there. But the primary argument was they could apply for a larger WIFIA loan if they had a higher dollar amount. There's some options. If they were to build the 1 million acre foot reservoir, they would have to remove LV 1 and 2. They would be in the watershed. So, and Contra Costa would not have a mechanism to get reimbursed for that. I encourage us to continue to participation, try and work with the Bureau of Rec to seeing if we can get the 1 million acre foot reservoir built as originally conceived in the state water concept. That would help everyone. Contra Costa has the challenge with sea level rise that they're going to have a seasonal water supply. They need the other stage. But recognize in going LV 1 and 2 reimbursement, Contra Costa said they didn't need the additional water of LV 3. They were not going to participate or pay for that. Only the other customers. And on the Bethany Transfer Pipeline, that didn't benefit them, so that was going to be paid for. Not by Contra Costa, they were not in that equation, but by the other members, including BAWSCA through San Francisco. So this is a classic example of water policy gone askew in the state of California. And it was finally East Bay Mud representative that put out a report showing what was your backup water supply, where were you going to get the water. They talked about starting at Freeport to bring the water down and using that. That was going to be $1 million startup cost. Who was going to pay for that? So there's some other issues when they are on the Bethany Transfer Pipeline. Late in the game, they said, oh, and by the way, there's a conservation easement. On the Delta Conveyance, we're going to tunnel under at $2 billion cost. LVE's response, well, we'll add another 6 years to our plan in order to get it, 6 years to get it through the administrative process to build a water system across the conservation easement. Never been done, but that was the planning mindset. It's amazing it went along this far. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions on Los Vaqueros? Okay, from the board. Public comment I'm going to do at the very end. Ms. Sankula, Bay Delta Plan, FERC update.
Good evening, board members. So I get the last update. There is not a lot to update, though, but I did want to make sure we talked about the Bay Delta Plan. The State Board has actually released a document. It was earlier this month called the Draft Phase 2 Bay Delta Plan Updates. So recall we are Phase 1, so this is Phase 2. So this is the Sacramento River, the tributaries, and the Central Delta. And this includes what they call the Program of Implementation. The idea of the Program of Implementation is, how do we go about, we have a regulatory framework, which is one option they're analyzing, and then the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes, and they're also analyzing that. So they're carrying both of those through this public process, presenting them, they're called provisions, in a series of, a document and then a series of public meetings that are happening over this next month and into January. We are still reviewing this document. It is fairly large, I would say technically complex, and it's written like a regulation document, which doesn't make it the most easy thing to decipher. We are actually participating or in person Tom Francis has been attending the workshops. He attended the workshop, first one yesterday, and he will attend the one tomorrow. And we're getting a lot of information through that process, but we're working with the PUC to review it and see where we go from there. You can find the details about the document on the State Board's website, along with, if you're interested, the hearings are also posted there as well. This is the process that we've been waiting for, right? So this has been time coming. And the next piece, we understand, will be documents related to phase one. But it's just not clear yet when those are going to show up. They were originally planned to come out at the end, well, now, but sometime before the end of the calendar year. Those may be delayed into early next calendar year. But so for right now, we're in a reading and analyzing and listening stage on the Bay Delta Plan. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board on that report? Okay, and the CEO's letter, we're not going to discuss. It's in the packet. Any public comments on any of these items? Which I don't think so, because there's no public here. Okay, next we have closed session. Any public comment on closed session? Apparently not. It's 7:30 or 8:35. How long will it take to set up? 5 minutes. Okay, at 8:40 we're going to start. And if we do closed session, I need to do report after. At 8:45, we need to do an extension to, if we're going to have any new items after that.
Exactly. The parking gate will stay open until they will let us out.
I'm not staying overnight either.
Okay.
So,
Me either.
okay.
Yeah, and I checked with Allison, and I go, do we need to do a vote now? And she's like, no, so we're close, so just see
Okay.
where we're at.
but you can't start an action item after 8:45. We're close enough. My watch stopped. Okay. Take-
Yes. Closed session ended at 8:50 PM and no reportable action was taken.
Okay, additional time for public comments. We don't have additional time for that, and we don't have any public here, so that's okay. Director's discussion, comments, questions, and agenda requests. Any from the board? Director Matichak. Oh, Director Jordan, who was first.
I may be jumping the gun, but if I understand it right, Director Matichak terms out soon, and so this may be the last time we see her. Is that correct? So thank you for your service, and I'm guessing you had something to say.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was going to let everyone know that this is my last meeting. I term out January 14th from the City Council, and I think it's really important that the representative from Mountain View be someone who's an active council member. And since I'll term out, I've asked that they appoint somebody else in my place. I just want to say this has been an incredible experience. I have enjoyed meeting you all and working with you all. Nicole, it's been great working with you. And gosh, I didn't know we were going to be leaving it pretty much at the same time.
Unexpected.
But thank you all. It's been a pleasure to be part of this board.
And thank you for your service. Any other comments or questions? Okay, date, time, and location of future meetings?
Director Dorr has her hand raised.
Oh, Director
Sorry.
Dorr. Director Dorr, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I so wish I could be there in person tonight, as I believe this is going to be my last meeting as well. Family Matters called me back to Missouri, so I'm here presently. But it has been a real honor to serve on BAWSCA. I've learned so much. I'm so excited to stay involved in all that is water in our state, and I look forward to staying in touch with many of you in the coming months and years. So take care, everyone. Don't be a stranger. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments or requests? Date, time, location, future meetings, see the attached schedule. And if no other issues, to adjourn for the next meeting. Next meeting is January 16th, 6:30, same place. Thank you. Meeting's closed.